I got a question for you. What do sugar, tobacco, oil, steel, and phones have in common? The companies that resource, process, produce, and or distributed these things held a monopoly of their production in history until broken up by laws preventing such monopolies. Okay, a monopoly happens when a company has exclusive control of the supply and or trade of a certain commodity or service. And when that commodity becomes essential to the operation of a society, there is a danger of price gouging the people for something needed. So what happens if the whole world is sick and I have the cure? I can accumulate a whole lot of power at this moment. Now religion, at its worst, can act this way. So we need humility to take on this next passage without bowing to the temptation of power offered by the world that we talked about last week with Jesus in the desert. Now, there's a double-edged sword to this passage. It says that God didn't send the Son into the world to condemn the world, but redeem it. That is a pretty passage that you can put on a coffee mug. I kind of like it, actually. But then it says that directly following that those who don't believe it are condemned already. Well, dang it. Like God is passive in the condemnation business? Like God's going to say, well, guys, I don't do that condemnation stuff, but it looks like you're already condemned. That's a pickle. I know what I'll do. I'll send my Son to die on a cross so that anybody can claim that as their ticket out of condemnation. Really hope they hold up signs at football games to get the word out. You can see the last video for that one. Then most of humanity never hears about this, and then they die condemned. Not a very effective plan from the God of the universe, if you ask me. If that's not what's happening here, and that's not what Jesus is talking about here, we got some work to do. Hermeneutically, that's a big word. That means we got to think about it. Now, this understanding about the faith has actually monopolized, that's a fun word, monopolized salvation over the years into the hands of a select few who then use it to manufacture fear of condemnation in the hearts of their culture and then sell the cure. Look at that. This is right here in my hand. Now, it might be effective at getting folks in the doors, but it makes folks afraid of God and insecure that they are insufficient as human beings. Both things you don't want going on. Now, this usually only produces outer conformity to the uniformity demanded by those in power. And those in authority can get on a power trip and become abusive mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. And this is all coming into light in modern times because you've all heard about the cover-ups and the hush monies and the non-disclosure agreements, and people are coming out saying this person's fallen, that person's, it's just wow. The judgment that Jesus is talking of is actually our own making. In verse 19, Jesus says clearly about the condemnation, and this is the judgment, that we prefer darkness to the light. Okay, that is the judgment. God embodied in the person of Christ arrives. The Pharisees acknowledge that they know he is from God, and then they kill him later. And they have glimpsed the light that Christ is and huddle back into their caves of control, preferring violence to peace, supremacy to humility, nationalism to redemption, and religious moralism to spiritual awakening. The judgment we sit under is to live in an oppressive world created by our own love of darkness. So then Lent helps wake us up to the darkness we cling to personally so that we can see it in a broader scope, communally. Right? We hate the war in Ukraine, as we should. It is a great evil. But how can we expect peace on such a large scale if we can't let go of our contempt and resentment for individuals in our own personal life? We have to work here in what we have. Our personal love of darkness enables it to spread on larger scales. So Jesus did not come to establish a new religious monopoly, but to tear down the walls that attempted to contain God as a product to sell to the masses. Jesus comes to redeem us not from God's anger and wrath, but from our own judgment, which is the love of darkness that perpetuates evil in the world. Because now there is a new way, a new creation, a new kingdom of God that we can participate in. And it is free, and it is good, and it is beautiful, and it is true.